The more I think about it after letting the finale set in, and after reading all the comments you guys left on my last video, it really was impressive how much they set up early in the season and paid it all off in the gray. They're writing this series always looking forward, and they're ending each season super strong. Hey guys, Pete here. This is my For All Mankind Season 3 Questions and Predictions video. Of course, we're going to talk about everything that's happened through Seasons 1 and 2, so if you haven't seen those yet, this is your spoiler warning, and your chance to leave because we're going to jump right in. With the nature of the ripple effects in the alternate timeline, it's pretty hard to craft an overall prediction that imagines the complete trajectory for Season 3. The big question on everyone's mind is what was going on in that last shot on Mars and what that means for Season 3. And of course, I will finish this video off discussing that. But that's still a decade down the road. There's a lot of room for major divergences to unfold in that amount of time. Think about all the things we learned about happening between the seasons and the first episode montage in Season 2. To kick things off, the first question that comes to mind for me is what the actual fallout will be for the events of the finale. How will those events affect things globally? And what does it mean for this never-ending space race the show set up? In the short term, World War III has been averted. You would think that this would translate to electoral strength and a presidential victory for Reagan's Republican Party in the upcoming election in 1984. Remember, in the show, he was elected in 1976, so his second term is coming to an end. That makes me think that the next president will be his vice president in the show, which is actually Richard Schweiker instead of George H.W. Bush. Either way, the ending that we got is a temporary reprieve, but not the end of the Cold War. And maybe not the space race either. I mean, both leaders were looking for a way out of a nuclear showdown, and were happy to get it in the way of Apollo-Soyuz. But it definitely doesn't undo all the stuff that got us to that point. As I said, it's a reprieve, but there's still serious underlying tensions. The reason why space travel is advancing in this alternate timeline is the rivalry. If you take that away, how do you justify the ongoing spending to continue to explore space? If either side bows out, you have to imagine that things would start to look more like the timeline we live in. And at this point, the Soviets are still kind of winning. Only things are shifting a little since now the US does have the working Nerva engine and Pathfinder. They're still looking for something to be that big thing they did first, though. I mean, if you don't count shooting and killing someone on the moon first. And I don't think anything that happened in Season 2 would be the thing that slows them down. Plus, we already know someone will be pushing to get to Mars, and it will just be a question of who. The real end of the Cold War is essentially in 1989 in our timeline, and that means we'll go past that before Season 3 starts. Does that mean the dissolution of the USSR will have happened by the early 90s? Or do the changes the show's made mean that it'll still be there? It's really hard to say because there are differences and the show's not above hand-waving certain things. And to be honest, it doesn't feel like they're going anywhere at the end of Season 2. There weren't big hints that they were starting to crumble from the inside, so most of that actually comes from what happened in our timeline. I guess the main things to think about is that the show is definitely shifting away from the quagmires that happened in the Middle East. The USSR didn't go into Afghanistan, they're not tied up there. Also, 3 Mile Island didn't happen in the US, and that's an indication that Chernobyl might not happen in the Soviet Union either. The next big question is, what will the core group of characters that are still alive going to be doing in the mid-90s? Their ages are going to start being important. For reference, Ed will be in his early 60s, and from there you can kind of put everyone else's ages into perspective. And speaking of Ed, are Karen and Ed still together? Will they still be together in Season 3? I've seen a lot of comments pointing out that they were in 2 separate cars at the funeral. If they were in Houston, that wouldn't seem so out of place, but they were at Arlington National Cemetery, and that makes me think there may be something to it. The writers may have given us that to show that they're separated. We know that they split up before and came back together in the process of adopting Kelly. I definitely think they have problems ahead in their marriage, but honestly, given the 10-year gap, their marriage and what happens there isn't really that interesting to me at this point. I'd like to see Ed pass the torch. He could certainly still play a crucial role at NASA, but he's pretty much cemented his legacy at this point. And the younger characters are going to have to start stepping into the main roles. It'll be curious to see what they do with Karen now. She doesn't own the bar anymore. Of course, Kelly is probably going to be that connection. They're going to have to give Karen something else to do to keep her involved in season 3, sort of like how they gave her the outpost in season 2. Molly Cobb is another big question mark as far as the old astronauts are concerned. She's going blind, and that may be the least of her worries when you think about it. There could also be cancer or other complications coming to her in the future because of her exposure to the radiation on the surface of the moon. She's a great character. Just like Ed, I hope she's still involved. But with each decade we skip ahead, it's harder to see where their stories are leading. I think it's safe to say that Dani and Margo will probably still be involved in high-ranking positions at NASA. But you also have to believe that Dani will actually achieve real worldwide celebrity status after Apollo-Soyuz. It's one of those things that gets burned into the collective psyche of humanity, so everyone's going to know who she was and what she did. It's kind of hard to imagine Margo doing anything else besides what she's always been doing. She's a workaholic, she's dedicated to the space program, she's dedicated to NASA, and of course, they definitely set up a situation where she may end up compromised. Sergei definitely did reach out to her after the funeral because Soviet intelligence wanted him to. The question there is, when did they start to come after him to get to her? Like I said in the finale breakdown, I tend to think that they had real chemistry. So to me, it makes the most sense that she gave him the information about the O-rings. He went and took care of that. And at that point, they realized that they had something they could hold over her head. Sergei wears a wedding band. He seems to have a wife back in the Soviet Union. So it's in the realm of possibility that it was always set up that way. If you think back to when she gave him the note to meet her at the bar, it was a little bit surprising that he was able to shake his handlers and show up there alone. He also asked her questions like, is this a secret place for you? And you can make an argument that he was always on that path. And I guess in the big picture, it doesn't matter beyond the fact that if the chemistry was real and they use that against him, he's going to be more sympathetic, and that might come in handy for her if things get crazy. I can't say that her being a willing participant to pass state secrets makes a whole lot of sense, which means it seems more like a setup for something that'll tank her career. I think one of the most interesting characters to wonder about is Ellen. There was that whole Lee Atwater scene, throwing out the idea of her becoming a politician, which definitely does seem plausible. She's the girl that caught the tank after all, and she definitely earned some political capital with Ronald Reagan. I guess the other popular idea with her, based on her father's company and her background, is that people would like to see her go in the direction of having her own private space company. Personally, I don't really like the idea. I like the way that the show took things where NASA could make money from their own patents and be self-sufficient, and therefore there's no need for private corporations to get involved with space exploration. But I suppose it does sort of all hinge on her personal life. They've certainly made Pam a big part of her story, and she did step aside thinking that was the right thing to do at the end of season 2, but I doubt that's the last we're going to see of her. So the question then is, well, is she more likely to pursue that, and that's how we get there? So yeah, I don't really want to see Ellen go in that direction, but it seems like there's a lot of people who do. For what it's worth, I would like to see her get together with Pam. There's definitely a chance that if she becomes a politician, she'll be successful. Then there's always the chance that she could make that public after the fact when she already has power. So we'll just have to wait and see. As I said, the new characters should be taking over. Aleida is clearly in the best position to take on an important role at Mission Control in future seasons. Because of her age and how young she was in season 1, she could turn out to be the only character to feature heavily in every season if they make the full story that goes beyond our current timeline. So I think it's a pretty safe guess that she'll be the future Margo. She'll take over that role after Margo gets too old or she gets pushed out because of her situation with Sergei. Kelly is also following in her father's footsteps. You have to imagine that she'll be a future astronaut. That's another safe feeling guess when you think about it. They did a lot of personal setup for her this season. That's going to have to pay off one way or another. And Dani could go that route too, but after the finale and the unresolved situation with the affair with Karen, I'm wondering if he might not be set up for a dark turn, like a real crash and burn after his parents' death. I feel like there will be a turnaround in Karen's character arc, some sort of redemption, and I know her affair played a role in Ed's story as far as taking the initiative to destroy Sea Dragon and thus saving the Earth, but she could have had an affair with anyone to make that happen. It feels like there has to be a reason that they chose to make it Dani. If the plan has always been just to make him the next generation astronaut, it's not clear how the affair is a part of that. And it will kind of go down as the one unnecessary thing in this show that has been paying off everything that's happened early on. I don't know how it'll play out, but I feel like this is a character-defining event for him, more so than for Karen. And then finally, as far as characters are concerned, the other characters that seem likely to step up and have a bigger role in Season 3 are Helena, Webster, and Piscotty. I think they're both set up to come back and be involved in the next season. I guess there's also a chance that Sally Ride could be involved. I did enjoy the performance from the actor who played her, but it's a little unclear on how she might feel about things considering she pulled a gun on her superior officer. So the last big thing is Mars. The questions would be who won the race to get there. All of this is influenced by all the things I've been talking about. Based on the boot that we see in the Stinger, most people agree that it looks more like the Soviets, and that would be consistent. They've gotten everywhere else first. But I wouldn't say that's a slam dunk. Honestly, when I learned that they were doing Apollo-Soyuz in the show, I expected that there would be some path that led to cooperation between the two nations, and that might be the thing that pushed it to Mars. The problem with that idea obviously was if there's no space race, why did they go to Mars anyway? But I wouldn't rule out a joint mission and have to say that if the space race is still on for the next 10 years, I feel like the US would do everything that they possibly could to try to be the first there. So if those are cosmonauts boots, I'm going to say that maybe they're not the first ones to arrive. The third idea that I've seen thrown around a lot is that China has accelerated their space program, and so the twist will be that they got there first. Again, this is possible, but it doesn't seem that likely to me. In our timeline, their first manned spaceflight was 2003. By this time in history, though, they had been going in a different direction from the Soviet Union for quite some time, which means the show could add that in there, that the space race continuing to go on between the US and the Soviet Union encouraged China to speed things up in their own development. So I think that's probably enough out of me. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. There are a lot of different ideas being thrown around. I don't think that there's that much information in what we've seen. I don't think it's the mystery that we can solve at this point, but it is fun to speculate on. And I think that's a good place to leave things. Let me know in the comments what you think, what you're hoping to see in Season 3, any questions you have about Season 2, and anything else that's on your mind as far as this series is concerned. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.